Hey everybody, Windrake Hex here, doing a live limited set review for Hex Set 6 Shards of War. Commons and uncommons, so just the drafty, sealedy, fun stuff. It's about a week after the release of this set, um, and so I've played quite a lot of triple six, a lot of exposure with these cards. Been having a blast. There's lots of fun stuff in this set, and so I've got a chance to play with a lot of these cards. Anyway, really fun stuff. The review method I'm going to be using at baseline is mainly going to be the quadrant theory, which hopefully you'll understand as we go on, and something called the vanilla test. I didn't really come up with either one of these metrics or models, but um, and then also my own experience with it in the actual draft environment, and sealed. If you want to consider Gauntlet like true sealed, which is kind of hard. Well, I guess the principles are the same. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. So let's talk about these cards. Arena Regular is a 2 cost, single threshold, Ardent Troop Orc Warrior. So that's fine. When you get in charge, this deals 1 damage to each opponent. So this is a flashback from a set 2 card, I believe, and this guy's always been good. He's good now, he was good then. Being able to ping damage, even if this only activates once and then trades with a card, that's like pure gravy. The fact that he is part of a faction helps too. He's not a dead card late in the game, um, and any way you can do 3 to 4 points of damage, kind of incidentally, really adds to a lot of wins because Reeby's pretty good at getting ahead. It just kind of peters out, and you want something called reach to kind of finish the game and all that kind of stuff. But this card has that on a very stable package. I mean, often you're gonna get this value the turn that you play it, and then if it dies to removal, trades with a card, no big deal. 3 points of damage, right? So I like this guy. I give it a C plus. Ayotochi Cavalry is a 2 cost single threshold Ardent Troop Orc Ranger, and he's a 2/2 for 2. So nothing special there, but fine. While this is valorous, it can't be blocked by non-valorous troops. So um, this card would be exceptional in just set 5. He's pretty good in set in triple six. Though there's lots of games where he didn't really turn on, if you will, just because there's not a whole lot of valor floating around, things that make valor. The setup cost for valor is actually pretty high with a lot of cards in set 6. So this guy is not going to be as amazing um, as I'm sure we all thought when we first read it, just because it seemed like everything made a valor in set 5. Uh, so I'd say like 30% of the time this card was active and swinging and doing big things when I played against it. Still early, but I think this guy's going to be like probably hanging out in the C plus range as time goes on. It's going to win you some games. It's going to be a 2/2 for 2 a lot of games. It's going to be too little too late in a lot of games. But there's nothing inherently wrong with a 2/2 for 2, so you can't be too harsh on a card like this. Blitz is a 3 cost single threshold quick action. Mobilize. Target troop you control gets +4/+2 this turn. So this is an offensively statted combat trick that enjoys having a something holding back on defense. I don't really like that. So the question is it good enough for 3? Um, yeah, it's. I mean, there's gonna be a lot of times where at best, this is gonna 2-for-1 yourself, because you're gonna want something to trade up. But it's gonna win combat enough during the early stages that I think it's not bad. In response to your opponent's trick, it's gonna do a lot of 2-for-2s, which is okay because you want to maintain the initiative when you're Ruby, pretty much. There's oftentimes you're not going to want to hold anything back because you're just going to want to force a trade or do extra damage or whatever. So that's what I don't like about this card. I don't think it's quite good enough for 3, but there's not a whole lot of things that give you +4 power, so it's going to be good at more stages of the game, or at least decent. So I don't know. I give it a C. I I want to say C minus, but I haven't. It's great on defense. It's just kind of rare for Ruby tricks. So I like that. So not a horrible card. C. You probably won't mind playing 1, maybe 2. Boisterous Ballad is a 1-cost single threshold quick action. Conscript an Ardent Troop with cost 2. The created card gets speed. So I don't know. I'm sure some of you have conscripted some monsters or have had some just insane conscripted cards against you. The pool of 2-drops tends to be a lot more balanced than, let's say, 3. I know a lot of you know what I'm talking about. If we've seen turn 3 Fenteos or turn 3 Infinitrix and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, this card, I've never played it to great effect. The speed's a relevant ability. It's going to be fine on turn 1. Later on, yeah, who knows? It's a little underwhelming as far as conscript goes. There's nothing inherently wrong with its cost at all, and speed's fine. I give this card a C minus just because I still think I would rather just have like a set supported 2-drop than a random one with speed. But if you, as a conscript enabler, it's cool. It's great. It's cheap. Though the conscript enablers, you have to pair this with wild, and anyway, I haven't really enjoyed wild very much at all. But anyway, we can talk about that later. So I give this card a C minus. Deadeye Invoker is a 5-cost single threshold underworld troop, necrotic mage, scrounge 2, deploy, gain 2 charges on a 4/5 body. So stats are it's kind of a diminishing return type thing around turn 5. Like a 5/5 for 5 isn't that impressive, whereas like a 3/3 for 3 is. So like right around somewhere between turns 4 and 5, you want a little bonus on the stats. I'd say that all Ruby champions have pretty proactive champion abilities. So if you can get an extra trigger, an extra champion ability in a game, that's going to be huge. There are definitely cards that want charge. There's definitely charge matters decks. So this is going to, I mean, this directly combos with a bunch of cards. So in that regard, it's a great enabler. If, say, you curve out and then this could definitely set up an alpha swing, on turn 5 as early as 5. So for that, I really like this guy. I think he's gonna have to be a curve topper. Because on stats alone, it's not that great. So I'm gonna give this guy a C plus. It does turn on a lot of cards. It's definitely supports a supported archetype and champion powers. A lot of games are decided by who best leverages their champion power. So getting more champion powers than your opponent can often influence you to a win. So C plus. Distract 3-cost single threshold basic action. Up to 3 target opposing troops can't block this turn. So let's see. I've played about 70 games. I played a little bit today, so I would say 75 games. Matches, in other words, matches, not games. Probably hundreds of matches. Or is it the other way around? No, I've played 70 matches. Yeah, hundreds of games. Okay. Anyway, I've been playing this set for a week, and I have not seen this card cast once. I cast it once and won a game with it, but it was often kind of dead, just sitting in my hand. You get to see some elf butt, which is pretty cool. Um, so the art's really sweet. Um, but that being said, it as like a 23rd card just says, if I at parity or if I'm ahead, this card is going to help me finish off the game. Great. Um, its cost isn't really that prohibited, mainly because when you play a card like this, most likely, unless you're trying to really need to turn on diligence or something, like it's going to be around 5 or 6. Also, Well, it helps you get a couple more diligence triggers, so I guess it's good at different parts of the game. It doesn't necessarily have to be a finisher like these cards normally are. Um, I mean, three. That's all. That's often going to be your opponent's entire board. So that is a lot of targets. The thing is, this card is a little bit win more in a lot of games. I know it doesn't look like it, but oftentimes you're just ahead anyway, or it doesn't really solve any of your problems. So I'm gonna give it a C. Yeah, I'll give it a D plus. I mean, it just doesn't do enough. It's really good when it's really good, but so is every card. So based on different parts of the game and quadrant theory and all that kind of stuff, I would give this card a D plus. Explosive Interlude, 5 cost, basic action, deal 5 damage to target opposing troop. That's plenty. Ardent Allegiance, Creative Valor, and put it into your hand. So this is unflashy removal, but it's removal. Giving Ruby a way of dealing with bigger things is cool. Um, there's not a lot of too many things with more toughness than 5, so this is can just be considered, more often than not, to deal with anything card, in draft. And that Valor is good. Um, I like the little bit of value. I would play this without the Valor. Um, yeah, and that Legion's going to be triggered often. I think you got to consider a card like this like a B minus removal. It's not premier. It's going to be your stock removal. Oftentimes you're going to sideboard a card like this in because you're going to keep your more efficient early game removal in the main. I don't think you have to main deck this if you have some more efficient options. It's totally fine. Play one or two in the main. Like I said, it's going to deal with most things, just not efficiently sometimes. And that's fine. Basic action, nothing flashy, but removal is king in removal. And removal is king in removal. Removal is king in draft. So, yeah, I like this card. B minus. Speaking of efficient removal, that would be Feed the Flames, 2 cost, single threshold, basic action, scrounge 3, this deals double damage. So, a card like this really goes down in value when it's printed right next to a card like this, because essentially this is an epitome of efficiency. I mean, if it said deal 3 damage for 3, that would be a fine card. The fact that it says deal 3 damage for 2 makes this, like, efficient. Oftentimes you play this on 4, you're going to be able to play something and kill something, which is going to be a huge tempo swing in your favor. Also, the fact that this, in a lot of games, is going to do 6, thus dealing with, you could just assume that deals with everything, um, is really great. Yeah, it's basic action, but I feel like this is, if they gave like another quick action, super efficient removal for Ruby, it'd just be like getting a little ridiculous. I feel like they need to taper back a little bit. This is kind of Ruby's premier common removal. You're gonna first pick these often, and you're definitely, once you're in Ruby, you're gonna gobble up as many of these as you can. It's splashable. Yeah, it's a solid B. Really enjoy it. Firesoul Gemsworn is a 5 cost single threshold ardent troop human made socketable miner deploy summon a Blackfire sorcerer. So it's a lot of value. It's 6/2 for 5, but this card's gonna have Swift Strike more often than not, and the Blackfire sorcerer, yeah, it's a randomized gem, but anyway, let's just say this. I've never been in a board state and played against this card and was happy about it. It's always, whether it was just I was ahead and the Swift Strike stabilized, or we were kind of teetering around parity stabilization, the Swift Strike pushed it through, the extra body has some super relevant ability. Anyway, this card's great value. Really enjoy it. Glad it's uncommon. If this card was common, it'd be format warping. Really good card. I would pick it highly. Play as many of these as your curve can support, which probably would limit to one or two. But I mean, it's uncommon. It's not going to be a whole very often. It's going to be it's uncommon and it's going to be a pretty high pick for a lot of people. So you're not going to get a ton of these anyway. So playing a couple on a deck, great curve topper. Really enjoy it. I can see it being underwhelming at times. You're going to want times where like a 4 or 5 would just be better. Um, like it's not necessarily going to solve anything, but it's going to at the very least those two bodies are going to be able to trade with any 5 or most 6 drops and stuff. So yeah, this card is just fine. Honestly, being able to split stats between 3 things is really good. If one of them gets Swift Strike and the other gets another relevant ability, pure gravy. Yeah, this card's just great. I give it a B minus. Flameguard, 2 cost, single threshold, Ardent Troop, Human Warrior, Diligence, target opposing troop can't block this turn. So, I've played this a few times, pretty underwhelming. It's kind of the uh, epitome of win more. 3/1 body for 2 is really it takes a lot of maintenance, and normally you have to spend tricks to try to keep this guy alive or do its thing. Once it's going, if you're curving out on the play, then yeah, it's fine. But its stats doesn't. It's not going to be able to attack profitably very often due to its stats during a lot of phases of the game. I do like that it's a 3 power and single threshold and all that, but it's a little hard to turn on. If you have a lot of mobilize in your deck, then yes, then that's a great reason to play this guy. Average case scenario, I don't know, kind of middling. Um, it looked a lot better than actually playing with it, I found. But it's still early, so I could be wrong. I give this card a C minus. All right. Well, yeah, I give it a C. It's totally fine because its upside makes up for its downside. At least cancels it out to make it kind of an average card. That's my analysis. But it's going to be bad at a lot of stages of the game. It's not necessarily good during development. I guess that means I need to give it a C minus. Yeah, C minus. Flamethorn Archer, 4 cost, double threshold, Ardent Troop, Elf Ranger, 1 shot, deal 1 damage to target opposing champion or troop. Great. That's awesome. I mean, this card would be exceptional. And probably not too unbalanced if they just made this tap. But it has relevant stats. I mean, it's undercosted, but as a 3/2, but it still can trade and attack, do do fine things with 3 power for 4. Um, but its upside is you can do 1 damage to your opponent and then get a Valor out of it. That's pretty sweet. Also, if you can attack with this give it Crush or something, it'll get you a Valor, and then you can do its 1 shot and get another Valor. And anyway, it starts kind of extracting value. Um, it's also going to hit a lot of important X1 troops on your opponent's side, so that's really good. I think this guy's just fine. Actually, quite good. So I give it a C plus, but a very high C plus, like a 79%. It's not quite a B, but honestly, like you could just as easily go B range. I mean, it's definitely a card you want multiples of in a deck. It's definitely going to be, pushing the value race into your favor and giving you subtle edges and stuff. So this card's really great. Furious Blitzer, mobilize speed, 4/4 for 6. So if you're just trying to kill your opponent as fast as possible, which is what Ruby should be doing, this card's great. Um, if you have some kind of diligence in your deck, the mobilize goes way up in value. Clearly for 6, this card's bad. So late game, but even like late game, say like you're playing another aggro deck and you're in a top deck war. This just being able to come out of nowhere and do 4 damage is probably going to be super relevant. So all those things being said, I give this a high C, low C plus. Um, so what is that? Like a 77%? I give this like a 77%. So it's often been good. The times that it wasn't, the opponent was just spending resources on something else. It was just sitting in his deck. But anyway, solid card, and most I think you're gonna play this for 4 and be happy most games. Uh, Gain ground, 2 cost, single threshold, basic action, discard a card at random and draw 2 cards. So the random part kind of sucks, mainly because you want proactive. You want to be proactive. Obviously, this card shines when you have like a shard or something. But I don't know. To refill your deck, it is a lot of refuel for its cost. I think this card's fine. I haven't ever played any of my Ruby decks because there was just more powerful things to do. But I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with this card. Um, card Ruby's so proactive that like drawing cards is like kind of danger ground. As far as set balancing stuff. So like the fact that this does actually give you card advantage, not just selection. No, it doesn't actually. But the fact that you can control the random part is kind of good. So like for this to feel like you really gained a card, you're gonna have to ditch a land. Otherwise, it could hurt you. I don't know. There's a lot of tension on this card, but the payoff is just fine, and you're probably effectively not even gonna use this card until you've done all your proactive plays and you want to refuel. It's hard to evaluate because it's not when it's good, it's not great, and it's not going to even be something you want to do a lot of the times. I guess I would make it a D. Um, but I think in practice, it's like a C. So do with that what you will. Moving on. Gallant Duelist, 4 cost, double threshold, Ardent Troop, Elf Ranger, speed, deploy, create a Valor, and put into your hand. So the problem I had with this guy is not really anything, because on paper that's fine. If it was a 4-3 for 4 with speed, that'd be great. It's even better as a 3-2 with, you being able to choose what you do with the Valor. It doesn't increase, give you a bit of a tempo loss, even though it's a speedy card. Because its stats are a little underwhelming, but I mean, Ruby loves Valor. It gives you a little more oomph into the late game, and I don't know. This card just hasn't made my decks. I just found more powerful things to do, but there's nothing inherently wrong with this guy. I give it a high C. Um, yeah, if you have Valor synergies, obviously this goes up in value. It's a pretty good enabler. That's a relevant attacker. Um, if you have tempo, obviously. Um, Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to be too critical of a card like this. If it just trades and creates a Valor, that's great. If it does 3 points of damage and sits back and eventually trades, that's fine. If it just creates Valor late game and allows you to attack with something bigger, that's fine. There's not really a whole lot downside to this card, so yeah, I give it like a 77%. Gawaine Prodigy, 6 cost, single threshold, ardent troop, human warlock, subcapital miner. So that just basically means 5/4 with strike. Which is cool. This often isn't going to make the deck just because 6 drops really need to be pretty powerful to justify being in a Ruby deck. Ruby doesn't really like 6 drops anyway, it wants proactive curves. This doesn't really say I win the game, doesn't even say I set up winning the game, doesn't really deal with any bombs per se. You can sit back and block. It's ground troops profitably most of the time. It's just underwhelming on multiple levels. At 5, great, but there's a lot of games, a lot of Ruby games, you don't even get 6 resources. They don't go that long. So it's just a little overcosted for Ruby. So I give it a C minus. Mechanized Compactor, 3 cost, single threshold, troop, dwarf, robot. So before we go into what this card does, there is I have found a definite need for dwarfs as a racial type. Um, it seems like Venom and definitely Necrotic are well represented in Underworld. The dwarfs are a little harder to come by. So the fact that this is a dwarf and you have any kind of racial allegiance type stats, like you're gonna want like your dwarf and a Venom and a Shinhair or something, right? This dwarf is often gonna push your threshold criteria to like 3 and make certain cards that are kind of bad when you only have 2 different races out, like really good at 3. Examples of those are probably numerous if you've played. I don't have them to pull up right now. But anyway, I found it difficult to find dwarfs, find a third racial type. And the fact that this is a dwarf and a relevant card is super powerful because what it actually does is, um, well, it's not that relevant. Okay, let's put it this way. I've won games where if I had any kind of sack outlet, I've I won on the back of this card because a 4/3 is a good card is great for 3 cost. And the fact that it's a dwarf helped. I know that sounds so weird. Like, how many cards can you say, oh, this card's great because it says dwarf? I found, maybe you won't find this to be true, that dwarfs are particularly, a third racial type is hard to come by. So value your dwarfs. Love your local dwarf, is what I'm saying. I was thinking about actually the other card that gets charge and crush when I saw this card because I just saw 1/3. But this card's kind of middling, actually. It's going to be bad in most decks. It's not game winning at all when you can set it up. And a 1/3 for 3 is definitely not what you want to play in Ruby. So even though I just advocated loving dwarves, I'm actually not going to love this dwarf and give it a D. Okay. Pyre Strike. 3 cost single threshold. Quick action. Deal 4 damage to target opposing troop. It gets, if this would die, void it instead. Which is super relevant with Scrounge and some of the bring back from the crypt cards and all that kind of stuff. This card's super good. Play as many of these as you possibly can. Um, it's uncommon, but just more efficient removal, quick action. Yeah, give this card a high B, like 77, 76.5. Very good. It's a reason to go in the Ruby. Very splashable too. Awesome. Pyresmoke Lurker for 4 cost, single threshold troop, necrotic rogue, 5/2. Never played this, never seen it played against me. No stats. Vanilla test does not pass. It's not particularly good at any stage of the game because of that huge liability of only having 2 toughness. Don't even want to be too creative. Give this card a D minus. Rise to the challenge, single threshold, rise, 1 cost, rise to the challenge, single threshold, basic action, target troop you control gets +2/+2 and speed this turn. So, this card's total poop. Why? Because it's basic action. You do not want to telegraph your tricks. This is basically just says do 2 damage to your opponent every once in a while. Do 2 extra points of damage to your opponent every once in a while when he's tapped out. This is a bad card. F. Moving on. This is the card I was thinking of. Rockslider, 3 cost, single threshold, 1/4. When you gain a charge, this gets +2 attack and crush this turn. So, charge matters is a thing. This definitely can be your win con in that deck, though, hopefully not. It's definitely can sit there and stabilize so you can set up a combo because of its stats. If you can ever trigger this twice, it's going to do a bunch of damage. I like this card a lot. I give it a C plus just because it needs setup, but because it's so synergistic in that deck, it gets the extra bonus points. Its stats alone clearly aren't good, but charge is a thing, and this guy likes charge, and the art's really cool. Moving on. Ruby's favorite, 2 cost, single threshold, quick action, choose one. So I think all the favors are a lot better than I thought. When I did before I actually played, I'm like, man, these are so underwhelming. I don't even know. None of these are actually worth a card. But turns out the flexibility and the environment where these cards live in, they're quite strong. So even if none of these clauses sound that good, the flexibility really does give it value. So with that being said, dealing 3 damage clearly is something you're going to want to do at some point in the game. Not great, Each opposing champion sacrifices an artifact. This could be your big answer to an artifact. That's fine. Or exhaust the troops you get control, get Swift Strike. This is totally going to come out of nowhere and just win combat. Doesn't do anything great, but it does a lot of things okay. Quick action and cheap. Why not? C plus. Moving on. Rustbucket Distractor, 2 costing a threshold troop, dwarf, yay, rogue. Scrounge 1, deploy, target troop can attack a block. So, it was good to diversify your racial allegiances, I think. Um, it's a 2 drop that, adds some value later in the game when you want to push through, like, your 4 drop that your opponent stabilize against to just try to win. That's fine. Oftentimes on curve, there's nothing more than a 2-1, so it's not fine. So for that reason, I give it a C minus because it does kind of feel like an underwhelming card in a lot of scenarios. But um, when it's not bad. It's not really. I mean, if you need a curve, it's a 2 drop. It's fine. Ruthless Cutthroat, 3 cost single threshold. When you sacrifice a troop, this gets +1. So with the Dreadlings trigger sacrifice. This gets bigger. The buffs are permanent, so this can get out of hand pretty quick. I think this card's a lot better than I first saw. I actually didn't even know that. I just thought Dreadlings died. I didn't know they actually sacrificed. It does it automatically. You don't have to pick them. The AI sacrifices them for you, but it does technically trigger sacrifice clause. So this is kind of a weird card in that there's not a whole lot of Dreadling generation in Ruby, and you tend to not really want to pair it with those shard types or shard pies that do. Interesting card. I think, there's going to be. This may give you access to a deck that you may not have otherwise been able to. It's kind of like, oh crap, what am I going to do with these Ruby and wild stuff that just kind of happened in my train wreck deck? Well, I guess I'm going to try to totally go all in on Ruthless Cutthroat. And it's going to win you a couple games and lose you a bunch more, but it's going to be kind of fun. And anyway, D+. Scraptooth Gnasher. 3 cost single threshold troop, null. Basic, exhaustive Scraptooth Gnasher, or Brute Count Basher. You control. This gets +3/+3 this turn. So, that's relevant if you can ever set this up, which is not going to be often, because you're going to be picking other cards, and, it's not like Baby Yeti, Mama Yeti, where, like, Mama Yeti was just so busted that, like, you would happily just play 22 cards, Uh, anyway, not great. I've never seen it be great. What it promises is just fine. I put these in my deck if I needed a 3 drop, or if I had 2, I'm like, cool, it's going to be kind of good every once in a while, but, not that great. If we had Crush or something, that may win you a game out of nowhere, but, yeah, moving on. I give it a D+. Okay, Stalagmage. 1 cost single threshold. Ardent Troop Orc Mage Diligence. This deals 2 damage to each opposing champion. So, outside of like a mobilized heavy aggro deck, this card kind of sucks. I know when cards like these come out, you think Ruby, you think on the play, you think attack, 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 you think anything to help me win faster is great, but you really do need cards with stats, to do stuff. And a 1/1 for 1 is not good enough, ever. So its ability has to be great to justify its stats, its libel stats. So you need mobilize. You need lots of mobilize. You need to trigger this 2 to 3 times to really feel like you got a whole card's worth of value. It's not going to happen very often. T plus. Surgesmith Engineer, 3 cost single threshold diligence, gain a charge, scrounge 1 speed. So it doesn't do anything particularly well. It's going to trigger your charge, which is fine. It obviously synergizes with other cards, but it just sounds like a perfect storm of underwhelming cards if they don't all come together in my mind. Um, Mobilize, trigger, attack. Yeah, I just haven't seen that deck yet. I can see it all working together in this nice synergistic way. Probably more consistently than I can imagine, but gaining an extra charge every turn because of its diligence clause, and then other cards gaining diligence and exhausting things, and then it happening more proactively because it has speed, because you have scrounge and yada yada. It's just at the end of the day, if that all doesn't happen according to plan, you just get like 3 2s for 3 or 2 1s for 2, and it's kind of like stats kind of. I like more consistent strategies. Let's put it that way. But this card's fine. I give it a C. Tale of Carnage. Target troop you control gets diligence. This gets three attack, forever, which is huge. The reason why these cards scare me is if its diligence doesn't replace itself, it just feels like you're gonna get 2 for 1, and if that risk doesn't really ensure that you win the game or become very much ahead to justify the potential card loss, it doesn't seem that great. This card doesn't seem that great. Never seen it played. Um, it's not really that. If you think of all the things you need to do to kind of set this up, it doesn't really feel that proactive. It's gonna get put on something evasive, and you're not gonna draw an answer to it, and it's gonna kill you, and you're gonna be like, "Oh man, that card was amazing. What the hell?" But oftentimes, your opponent's just gonna be like, "Thanks for setting up a 2 for 1," or like, "Great, now your 4 1's a 7 1, but I have 3 2 2s just sitting here." You know, because other ones make zombies, other ones draw cards. This one just helps you win faster if you're ahead, and you can dodge removal. D. Thorn Weaver, 4 cost. Thorn Weaver, Ardent Troop Elf Warlock. Deploy, gain +2 for each different Ardent race on troops you control. This card's really good. Really, really good. It's effectively a 3/4 for 2, which is nutso because it's going to trigger itself. Um, so anyway, this card's very. I think you just play as many as you can, unless like because I'm tired and I can't remember if it actually does trigger itself. Because every time I've seen it play, there's other Ardent stuff out there. So maybe if it's just an elf, I should know this. I'm embarrassed I don't. I've just every time it's played, it's gained 2 or 4, so I just assumed it triggered itself. I think I was ahead those games, so I wasn't really that worried. There's not a whole lot of resource dumps, but being able to play like say on turn 6, being able to play a 4 drop and in this sounds amazing. Being able to dump your hand sounds amazing. There's nothing wrong with this card. This card's so good. It doesn't even if it didn't do anything, it just top decked it. A 3/4 for 4 isn't horrible. So this card's very very good. B minus. Just because it doesn't, it just it's not win the game by itself or you know what I mean. So yeah. Trueheart Skirmisher, 3 cost, double threshold, mobilize, deploy, draw a card. This gets at the end of this turn. If this was in your hand, discard this turn. So basically, this is a 2 for 1. If you have something to mobilize, it's going to draw you a card, and then you're probably going to be able to play that card. If you play this on turn 4 or 5 or 6. Turns 4 or 5 or 6. The 2 that big of a deal? No, but is drawing cards always a good deal? Yes. So I got no beef with this guy. I played 4 of them in my deck. I used it once. It was fine. The 2 was irrelevant. So I do agree with that. Well, it's small sample size, but I think a lot of games is going to be a C plus. And Zap. So 1 cost, single threshold, quick action. Yay! Deal 1 damage to target opposing champion or troop. Gain a charge. Cool, man. So it's probably at best out of the sideboard when you know that it's going to be worth a whole card because it's either going to kill something or you really know that you just need to. Like you're so charge centric that you just need triggers, and those are your triggers sometimes kill things. That's great. Um, yeah, I look at this card as more of a sideboard card, to be honest. So that being said, I give it a D plus. All right. Well, thanks for bearing through that. If any of you actually have, I kind of doubt it. But we're going to continue on with the set reviews later. Prismatic, Wild, and Sapphire. Ruby overall is probably second to last in set 6 as far as relative power level. We're gonna do Sapphire next, but Sapphire pretty good stuff in Sapphire. So Um, anyway, I but any shard can win. Any, you know what I mean. So don't that doesn't really mean much. So just it hasn't so far hasn't totally blown me away. It's like a good removal, but it's like native synergies aren't particularly strong. Just my opinion. Small sample size. Don't freak out. But thanks for watching.